Hello, new pro photographers or aspiring pro photographers. My name is Omar, and today we're going to talk about mistakes that, not me, I haven't made these at all. And I thought I would give back because I've made a lot of these mistakes. And when you're starting out, there's just so many new things. You have to figure out your own system and your own way of doing things. So here we go. Here are mistakes that, again, I've never made. Okay, and the first one is thinking you probably should specialize immediately. And I made this huge mistake because I had this awesome plan that I was going to become an amazing baby photographer. I was so into Ann Getty's, and I was like, I'm going to make these amazing baby newborn portraits. What I didn't realize is, I don't know if you know this, but babies cry. And my personality and my energy didn't match that type of photography. I didn't have the patience and also the soft nature and the calmness you need working with new mothers and working with babies. I was like, come on, let's get the shot. So instead, you should try different types of photography. Just dabble in a couple of things to see which you like the best. And that might spark you down the correct direction. The next one is if you're spread too thin trying out different types of photography. So you want to shoot events, but you're also doing headshots, and you are interested in fashion, but you're doing baby kid portraits and families and reunions. And, it's the first one I said, don't specialize, but you also have to sort of try each one and get better at it. If you spread yourself too thin, then I think the level of photography in each of those genres will take longer to get better at. So you're not going to become an amazing headshot photographer in the same amount of time if you were just dabbling in 2 or 3 things instead of 8, okay? So take on, yes, family portraits and maybe headshots. The next mistake you're making, is not pre-building a portfolio. I just started working. I just started charging people for portraits. Give me money. Which was a big mistake because I knew that I was good enough to charge, or so I thought, good enough to charge. But what I should have done was probably pre-created a portfolio of my style. You can do this by asking friends and family members, and it sounds weird to say to work for free, but make sure you have a day job. Build your portfolio up so that you're confident about it, and then you can charge what you think you're worth. Instead of learning on the job, and those poor people who hire you, you don't know how bad your work is, which brings me to my next point. You don't know how bad you are when you first start out. When you go from social media and all your friends are telling you how great you are, right to working, you don't really have a sense of your level or ability. We are sometimes not the best judge of our own work. You're not as critical on yourself than you maybe should be. If you're charging people, especially once in a lifetime events that you're capturing, you shouldn't be charging people a high amount if you're not if your level of work is not up to what the standard is in your area or industry. Now, that's a catch-22, right? You need experience, you need photographs to be able to charge. How are you going to get experience and, have a portfolio built up? And again, it comes down to there are levels, right? You can build a portfolio using friends and family, and maybe people who don't have a lot of money will be willing to take a chance on you if they can't afford a photographer in the area, and they see that you're good enough. You can hook up with a couple of people that way, as long as they're on board with what you're doing, that you're building your portfolio, and that's why you're not charging as much. Also, have other people look at your work, have people really criticize your work, and be honest with yourself. If there's photography that you like, look at those photographs and compare it to your own. What is your lighting doing? What's your posing like? Do your clients look uncomfortable and stiff? You should kind of be able to identify problems, which is something I didn't do early on enough. I just kept shooting and was fixing problems that kept happening as opposed to identifying and working on those problems, which brings me to my next bullet: practicing. One thing I didn't do was set time aside for practicing. Since when I first started my business, it was a side hustle. I was working a day job all day, and then I was kind of shooting and catching up with everything. And I didn't have enough time to sort of figure out what happens if you put a light closer? What happens if things I do now, like crazy, turning ISOs down and powers up and different shutter speeds and moving the camera? And if you're a pro photographer that wants to get better quickly, you have to practice every day. You have to have the camera become an extension of your body so that you can interact with clients without looking down at the camera or looking confused. People can see that. They can read if you know your gear or not. One thing I've been doing lately at jobs is, because what I used to do is sort of mask what I was doing, like changing ISOs, changing light powers. And now when I'm working with one of my mitzvah kids, they're in front of this huge light and I kind of just tell them what I'm doing. And it seems like they're becoming more interested if they're part of the process. So, for example, I'll say, oh, right now I'm turning up your hair light. I'm giving you a little bit more hair light. What do you think? What do you think? And then, show a picture of a little hair light, a lot of hair light. And so my little clients are starting to understand what I'm doing, that it's a process. We're making a portrait of you and there is lighting involved here, but we're also having fun. That I got more comfortable with because I know what my camera is doing and what my settings are doing. So now I'm just telling, as opposed to before being freaked out about it. Practice shooting, practice settings so you know what the outcome will be. What's next? Not knowing what to charge. This is a very famous one. I don't think anyone knows what to charge for anything. But there's an easier way to think about it, and it's, what do you want to make? And this has to do with your lifestyle, where you live, what country you're in, how much people like you make. And for me, it was, I wanted to make as much as I did with my day job so that I could leave my day job. And so what I had to do was figure out how many shoots, how much to charge to equal that amount. Remember, taxes and retirement. That's another one I should put here as a bullet. Save for retirement mistakes. Make sure you do. But there are pricing calculators out there that will help you decide how much you should charge for a job. And what happens is, as a new photographer, is you kind of just spit out a number. Oh, $400. It's $400. But what you don't realize is, sure, it's $400 for the portrait shoot, but you also have storage of the files. You spend 4 hours, editing them, removing pimples. Maybe you agreed to remove braces, another mistake you do as a pro photographer. You just do things without thinking. You're like, sure, I'll take care of that. So once you add up all the hours of everything you agreed to do, you're going to realize that sometimes in the beginning, you're making minimum wage or even less than minimum wage. So you actually have to use a calculator that tells you, hey, I'm a $150,000 a year photographer. So this is how many jobs I need to take. And if I do take a new job, how many hours is it going to be? And this is what I charge. Now, this calculator isn't perfect, but it works for event photography and for maybe if you're doing commercial work or if you're shooting products for someone, you know how much time it takes, so you know how much to charge. Pricing could be a whole month of videos, but at least start going down that rabbit hole if pricing is a problem and look up other videos on pricing. The next one is, everyone says yes to you. Everyone books you. I made this mistake early on. You've arrived when people keep coming to you to try to book you and you're already booked up. That means you need to raise your pricing. And that happened to me. I was priced so low and my skills were so good that I was basically booked up immediately. Everyone's like, you got to use this guy. He's great. He's happy. He's awesome. He's good with the kids. He takes great photos, but he's $3,000. That was for 3 shoots. That was for like an 8-hour day here. That was for lots of hours of editing and storage of photos forever and an album. And so I quickly realized that I was the cheap photographer in the area that was good. And so you have to know when to raise your prices. And that may mean taking on a whole new clientele. So you can't be afraid to sort of have people say, "Oh, you're too much." And that has happened to me, but I'm still booking. So that means that people will still value what you do as long as you price yourself at something that you feel you're worth, that your work is worth, and you stick to it. You don't be afraid for people to be like, "Oh man, can you bring your price down? That's way too much. That's more than the other guy." You just say, "Sorry, I may not be the photographer for you." So have confidence in your pricing, stick to your guns, but also be realistic. If you're all of a sudden, "Hey, I'm going to charge $10,000 a job," and no one is booking you, then that's a problem. The next mistake is doing everything. I still do everything, but the things that you hate, you should get rid of. And the one I hate the most is like keeping track of the finances and taxes and putting stuff away for retirement. So that stuff I have outsourced. Someone does the taxes, someone takes care of the retirement, my wife. So that financial stuff is taken care of. The other one that was becoming too much of a headache was editing 1,000 photographs. And so I started outsourcing my event editing, where I would edit just about 100 or so for my client's first peak the next day, and then outsource the rest where someone can do it. Lately, by the way, I've been experimenting with AI, artificial intelligent editing, and it's been going pretty good. So more on that maybe. The other thing I hated was keeping track of emails, communicating with clients, writing up the contracts, filling in the things on the contracts, all those little sort of administrative things. I ended up getting Sprout Studio. Sprout Studio is a great service. I think it's like $500, $600 maybe a year, but it's like cheaper than hiring someone to do all of this. You can automate anything. So it has galleries for people, but it also takes care of contracts. It has deadlines. It sends bills to my clients and reminders, all friendly. But things that I used to have to do manually, and I was so bad that sometimes I would do a job and people wouldn't pay me. They're like, "Do you want to get paid?" But now my computer, my Sprout Studio robot, takes care of that. It also has a bunch of automated emails. I just push a button on the proper response, and it's something that I pre-wrote, set up. So check out Sprout Studio, not sponsored, but they're super awesome. The next big mistake we all make, I'm still making it, is gear related. Being unsure about which camera, maybe having too many cameras, definitely having too many lenses is a mistake I made. There was some great advice by a photographer once, I think it was Joe McNally, that said, if you want to use 4 lights, use 3. If you want to use 3 lights, use 2. Sometimes taking out an extra light stand, and in the beginning you want to play because you're learning and stuff. Try as fast as you can with that practice to figure out what works for you and repeat without getting repetitive, but repeat so that you can interact with your client and you can be a little bit less anxious about jobs because you know what works, what lighting setup works. Stick to it. And lighting is so finicky that distance to the subject, angles, having a grid or no grid, all that stuff makes a difference. And if you're changing it at each job and then adding an extra light because you think you need it, you're just not going to learn. So too much gear a lot of times gets in the way, and brings me to my next point, which is budget. When you first start making money with photography, you're like putting it all back into the business for like gear and lenses because those are toys. Gear is fun. You really shouldn't be doing photography as a business to feed your photography hobby. So that's great if it's a side gig, like if you're taking on jobs so that you can buy a huge birding lens that's $12,000, then that's cool. But if your business is just, like money is flying out the window because you need the Sony A1 or the Canon R3, clients aren't going to notice that. If you're shooting weddings, you can shoot with a 5D Mark III, man, which is old, just when you're starting out. So don't be hung up on the commercials and the latest gear and YouTubers telling you what camera to buy. Use what works, the cheapest thing that works when you're starting out. The next one is, as you get better, you have to find a point when you trust yourself and you trust your decision making. That comes with confidence in your photographs and what your gear can do. But don't be so laid back that you're asking your clients what they want. Like, hey, you want to shoot over there? Do you want to shoot here? Do you want to do them indoors or outdoors? They hire you so that you can decide these things. You could say it in a nice way. It's probably better if we start here. If we have time, we can do some outside. Maybe outside it's sweltering hot and you already saw grandma's going to pass out. You need to make the executive decision. We're going to shoot in the air conditioning with nice lighting, okay? Even though maybe the bride wants to shoot outside in the swamp ass heat. So sometimes it's better to be in charge and trust yourself. And that comes with the years. That comes with the confidence where you're like, I got this, where you can finally say, I got this. So trust yourself. Okay, the next advice I can give you as a new photographer is don't burn bridges / fix all problems with clients. You don't really know how to do things in the beginning. And I remember being stubborn about one thing where thinking about it now was such an easy remedy, and I should have made it easy for the client and everything would have been happy. We both would have been happy. But as like a first year pro photographer, I made that mistake of being a little bit too stubborn. And what ends up happening is you see these clients at other events, you see them at other functions. And my advice to you is fix all your problems and never leave any clients unhappy, because you'll keep seeing them. And this will eventually grow into having great customer service, seeing all your returning clients, being friends with your returning clients, and it's sort of like wildfire. It all builds. You love all of them because you understand them, because you want to do what's best for them. You want them to have a great experience with you. So even if some of them are pains in the butts, you got to understand where they're coming from. Now, looking into the future, this is not a mistake you make as a new photographer, but eventually you want what's called a red rope policy. I learned that from some seminar. I'll write it down if I remember, but the red rope policy is where you decide which clients to take. Maybe you have a certain personality or a certain clientele or a group friend that you know that you will definitely let them in past that red rope. But you know that there's pain in the butt people. There's people who maybe don't have the same views as you or values or don't care about certain things, that you maybe close the red rope and you decide which clients you take on. And that's a real luxury where you can really be with cool people who, are just amazing clients, and you're not just a work for hire. They really value photography and they want to be with you, spend the day with you, and that's the goal. And the last mistake I'll say, because I know it now, is not scheduling in, when you're full-time, sanity days or off days where you can just go ride a bike, hang out with the family, go ride your motorcycle, go shoot photography for yourself. Although that's another mistake you make as a new pro photographer is don't become a pro photographer if you love photography as a hobby, because what happens in the beginning is you won't take your camera with you anywhere. You'll start leaving it behind and doing photography less. So put in those sanity days for you and you'll be okay. All right. I hope that helped you guys, and good luck.